I saw the title of this book and I knew you'd want to see it. Hi, I'm Victoria and I read bad books for your sick, twisted pleasure. Today, we're going to be talking poolside reads. We have Pool Girl by Cassie and Pool Accident Passion by Phyllis. So both of these are short stories. Pool Girl is like 50 pages and Pool Accident Passion is like 35. Honestly, I am in the middle of a 500-page bad book I'm doing for another video, and I just needed something short to help me feel a sense of accomplishment. So this is just like, it's a fun little break. It's a fun little time. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with Pool Girl. So Elsie is a professional mermaid, which sounds like a very fun and exhausting job. She loves the water, she loves being a mermaid, and she loves it so much actually that even when she's not at work, she spends all of her time in her apartment complex's kind of shitty rundown pool. She just has her little floaty, she has her little drink, she has her little magazine, and she just likes to lay there in a bikini, enjoying the water and hopefully enjoying the sight of the caretaker. Now, the way that she describes this man is just real interesting to me. He's nothing like the other men around here with their slicked back hair and fitted shirts. The caretaker is rough and wild, completely unpolished. Seeing his big scarred bulk with his muscles and his beard and the hard set to his mouth, seeing him by the pristine white tiles and sparkling turquoise water is unsettling, like seeing a tiger stalking down the street or a bear at the beach. You get the picture. And every time he limps past the water's edge carrying a toolbox or ladder, I go completely still on my float. We also find out a couple paragraphs later that he's like twice her age, at least. And I don't want to be ableist. Guys with limps are hot. Guys with scars are hot. Big, bulky men with beards, very hot. All of these things, hot. Dilfs, sure. We like a good dilf around here. That's fine. However, the way that she describes him, plus the fact that he's just the caretaker for a large portion of the book, just makes me think of this.
Whoa! You're all doomed!
And look, if that's your type, by all means go for it. It's just not what I would consider a typical romance hero. It's not what I would consider conventionally attractive in any way. It's not really my vibe. And I think this is meant for a very, very, very niche audience of perhaps up to 12 people. Just interesting to picture this like professional mermaid, very fit, very young, with this guy. Just an interesting thought experiment. At first, so this seems like it's been a crush that's been happening for like months, if not years, since she's lived there. And one day she sees him get a hard on when he's looking at her. He has a little like caretaker shack that overlooks the pool, and he sees him looking at her and like getting a little happy about it. So she decides to go over there. We then get a chapter from his point of view. His name is Tanner, which feels a little too 90s hot jock guy for this guy, but you know, sure. His name is Tanner. He assumes that Elsie is staring because of his limp or like just the overall way that he looks. He assumes that she's completely out of his league, which seems like she is, just broadly. And that she's just kind of like looking at him as this terrible abomination of a thing. Very Beauty and the Beast, right? She comes up to his office and asks if he would like to swim. And he is like completely startled and just kind of brushes her off very gruffly and like doesn't really know how to interact with that. He does regret not being able to handle it more smoothly. He says, "What the hell even just happened? She's never spoken to me before, let alone invited me to swim with her. Does she ask other men to join her? The thought makes my jaw clench. No, unacceptable. She's mine." They have never actually had a conversation up until now. Saying this complete stranger who just nicely invited you for a swim because you keep staring at her, telling that person that she's yours is just a little premature. And look, I get the appeal of the she's mine, I own her thing. Like, I get that. It just, because they're complete strangers, it doesn't come across as like an I want you and only you and you are special to me and I want to make you mine because you are my love. It doesn't come across like that if it's a stranger. It comes across as I want to own beautiful women that I see because I deserve it. That's what that comes across as when you don't have the relationship behind it to like support that decision. You know, it just feels like the desire isn't for that woman, it's just to own any woman when you don't know her. Right? The next day, she's at work doing her mermaid thing and she keeps thinking about him and how hot he is. And while she's thinking about him in the pool, while she's doing her mermaid thing, he shows up at her workplace. She never told him where she worked or what she did, or invited him to come to her workplace to observe her half naked in front of people. He gets startled when she makes eye contact with him and just like bolts, just like runs away. A very normal response to showing up to someone's place of work and then realizing that they see you. That night, she comes to visit him in his little caretaker's hut that nobody has been murdered in for sure. She's like, hey, I like it when you watch me. Which is really not the pickup line that I would personally go for. I'm glad that she's feeling that. But apparently the caretaker's really into it because then he goes into this whole spiel. Do you, Elsie? Good. Boots thump against the tiles and I whip my head. There's a whisper of fabric. Because I like watching you. I like your shiny, pretty hair. I like your big blue eyes. More than anything, though, I like watching your juicy bounce as you walk. I like the swell of those hips made for gripping with big hands like mine. I want to leave my goddamn fingerprints all over them. Is that all right, Elsie? Is it okay that I like your sweet... Ew, 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 ew. That's not flirting. It's not like sexy dirty cock. That is just such perv language. Like, that is the language of someone who doesn't speak to women but watches way too much porn. That is just not how people talk. There's also a Goodreads review that literally quoted this part in saying that this guy was just creepy. And yeah, I'm with her on this. The way that he talks, not sexy. Please don't. Please stop. And, you know, of course, Elsie responds like any other woman would in this situation. She throws herself at him and kisses him. And they get it on. He tells her that she's gonna ruin him, which, again, we can't even count the red flags. There's too many to count already. She then confesses that she's a virgin, and this makes me so uncomfortable. Even more uncomfortable than I already was, which was very uncomfortable. Like, also, just regardless of who you were doing with, in a murdery caretaker shack in the middle of the dark in an unsanitary public place where A, no one knows where you are, but B, anyone could walk in and see you and hear you at any point. It just feels like, especially with a stranger, none of this feels like a good safe space to do that for the first time. But anyway, she's totally consenting. So in the throes of passion, he bites her shoulder and draws blood. He feels really embarrassed afterwards, realizing that he like kind of marked her a little bit, and bolts. He's just out of there. What a dick. What a terrible, terrible person. That limp really doesn't hold him back, though. Good for him. So he's embarrassed, so he hides out from her for 5 straight days. And then on the 6th day, she finally sees him in his definitely not murder hut and goes to confront him because she's the adult in this relationship as the 20-year-old dating a 45-plus-year-old. She decides to seduce him for some reason, since it worked out so well the first time. He gets on his knees for her and then immediately leaves after she's satisfied. Way to go, Tanner. This girl needs to find someone her own age who doesn't act like this. At some point, a couple of days later, he sees her from his murder hut crying near the pool. He rushes out and is like, who did this to you? Why are you upset? I want to murder whoever did this to you. This man has the emotional intelligence of a toddler. A very stupid toddler. Anyway, she's like, you idiot, you're the person. And they have makeup sex. It's great. And he talks dirty to her, and it makes my skin crawl, and I hate it. It sounds exactly like how a man twice my age who hasn't had sex in a very, 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 very long time would talk to a woman, and it's not fun. And then, so everything is happy, and we get to the epilogue. It's 5 years later, and they're married. They have 3 kids. They still live in the same apartment complex. He's still the caretaker. They don't care that everyone is watching him grope her all the time. They're like in the pool, and he asks her where the kids are. She's like, yeah, they're away playing. And they like sneak to his murder hut to bone, leaving the children apparently completely unsupervised. These like 3-year-olds. Happily ever after, I guess. There wasn't a single moment of that I liked. There wasn't a single redeeming quality about that book. So let's take a deep breath. Let's cleanse our palates with a little pool accident passion, shall we? Honestly, I don't even want to read this book. I just want like the dust jacket for the hardcover that's never going to come out of this, so I can put it on the actual book that I'm reading while I'm at the pool and just watch people's reactions as they walk by and realize what the fuck is happening. That's all I want. However, since that will not happen for me, let's find out what's actually in this thing. We open with our love interest, Lincoln, who is arriving at Corinne's house to repair her pool. He is a pool maintenance man, and she has a really terrible pool. And the moment that she opens the door, he's just doing like a full body scan of her, stopping right around this area, but then keep going. And there's like this clear awkward pause where he's just staring at her and not saying anything. And it is at this point that if I were Corinne, I would slowly close the door and lock it and potentially leave out the back. But he eventually comes to his senses after realizing that this is the most beautiful woman he's ever seen, and he's already like feeling a deep soul connection with her. And he's like, hey, pool? She's like, yeah, pool. And they go out there. I would personally not be home alone with that man, but okay. So Corinne got the house a couple of months ago, and the previous owners kind of let the pool deteriorate. The shit's expensive. They weren't maintaining it. Makes sense. So he's walking around the pool and listing a bunch of really expensive things that need to be fixed. And he's in his head being like, God, she must hate me now. Even though, like, it seems obvious that this pool, like, she knows that this pool is in a bad state. It seems like it's full of dirty water. Like, things are, like, falling off. There's, like, uneven tiles that, like, this place is, like, clearly falling apart. And he's feeling bad that he's acknowledging the fact that things are falling apart. Just gotta read you a little quote here. Even though I'm certain that a pretty young woman like her would want nothing to do with an older pool maintenance specialist like me, it still bothers me to know that she must hate my guts after hearing all of this news that I'm bringing her. I don't know why both of these books happen to be accidental age gap romances, but I'm not here for it. Look, if you're into DILFs, that's fine. It's just... Also, the way that these conversations are written is so painful. I'm just going to read you a little bit. Are we talking thousands of dollars? Corinne asks. Yeah, I'm afraid so, I reply. It's like I can hear her heart breaking as I say this. I thought it might be that much, she says, sighing. I hate how each thing I say to her no doubt pushes her farther and farther away from me. Like, I've clearly never owned a house with a pool. One thing I know from just being an adult in the world is that pools are expensive. Saying that it's thousands of dollars in repairs does not tell me if it's $2,000 or $10,000 or $30,000. Like, that's a wide range. And one of those is a totally reasonable number to expect for regular home maintenance, and the other is like a big expense that she can be stressed about. Saying thousands is so broad, and I just don't understand why, like, she bought this house. She must have seen the pool when she bought this house. So she would have had to factor that into the price. Does this woman not have a home inspector? Are we still doing, like, the thing where we buy houses sight unseen with no inspection? Are we still doing that? You should have been aware that this was going to be a problem and, like, either factored that into the purchase price or, like, saved up some money. Like, this should not be a surprise to her. And the fact that it is makes me feel that she is far too naive for home ownership. I also really think it's interesting as, like, we see this happening from Lincoln's point of view. And he's just, like, his heart is crushing because he's so, like, in tune with her emotions. And I find it really interesting that, like, it's a common thread in a lot of these insta-love books that we've been reading together, the two of us, you and me. It seems like the main way that authors communicate this insta-love from a man's perspective is having him be overly empathetic and, like, constantly, like, looking to her for cues of her emotions and, like, whether or not she hates him or not, and, like, he's really responsive to it in a way that, like, in real life would make me feel very babied in, like, a very uncomfortable way if someone was, like, hanging on me. Like, that's not a healthy way to be, obviously, but it feels like this is a fantasy that tries to overcompensate for men just generally being, for, like, straight guys just generally being not as empathetic and engaged in relationships as women would want them to be. I mean, like, obviously that's a stereotype, and, like, I'm not trying to generalize, but it's interesting, isn't it? That that's how women choose to write men who are, like, instantly madly in love without having, like, actually anything in common. That just he's not, like, thinking about how cool she is or, like, liking the things that she has in common or, like, even liking any of her personality traits. He's just, like, deeply concerned about her emotional state in a way that feels like all the women are toddlers about to have a tantrum and he's a stressed out single mom in a grocery store just trying to avoid the inevitable. It's interesting. It's just interesting to me. So we get to the accident. Are you ready? Are you ready for this pool accident? Corinne trips and almost falls into the dirty water. Lincoln saves her at the last minute, but then somehow falls in himself and is totally fine. It's just that his clothes are wet and it's gross in there. It's not like he even, like, landed on a dead possum or anything. It's just, like, some old leaves got stuck to him. That is the state of the pool accident. I wanted drama, okay? I wanted drama. I wanted blood in the water. I wanted angst. I wanted someone to be knocked out. I wanted to not know if they were going to be paralyzed for the rest of their life. No, they're fine. If no one is hurt, can it be classified as a pool accident? Like, if I trip on the crosswalk and don't even skin my knee, I just get up and walk away, it's not a road accident. I just stumbled. Who titled this book and why did they do it this way? I feel like my expectations were not met. I was set up for a angsty pool accident and was not given one. And now I want one. Now I really want one. There's a whole section in here as well about Corinne lamenting her own clumsiness and talking about this time in high school when she tripped and everyone laughed at her. That sounds like something that definitely happened. And I really thought that we as a society were past the clumsiness as a personality trait thing. I thought we were, after the Twilight era, I thought we moved on. So because Lincoln is now sopping wet with dirty water, she lets him go inside and shower and then offers to, like, wash his clothes for him. The real tragedy here is when she takes his clothes out of the dryer, they're completely shrunk. So they're completely unwearable, and he's just, like, sitting in her house in a towel, dripping wet and super hot. Personally, I would be kind of pissed if I was him. I guess it's a tax write-off if it's his uniform, but, like, I'd be a little upset about that. But she starts crying, he starts laughing, then she starts laughing, and they start making out. And then they do the dirty. The sex scene is weird and not like in a kinky fun way. Even if you do have a breeding kink, I find it hard to believe that the phrase filling my womb with his seed could ever be sexy in any context. No matter what you're into, I just feel like that's not the way to phrase it. And there's something about the way that this author focuses on the actions of like both man bits and lady bits in a way that makes it seem like there's more sensations going on, that they're like moving on their own in ways that like I don't think those bits do. Really, it's just, I don't know that it's like a misunderstanding of anatomy, but it's definitely like she's trying to describe what's happening but not really focusing on the right body parts at the right time. Like, you want to see her back arch, you want to see him like straining to do things, you want to see his like hands roaming, lips roaming, all of these things. Like feeling sensations all over your body, like tingling and hot and like all of these things, tension building. Those are all the things you want, and the author isn't really focusing on those. It's more like just the actual like part, and both of these things are doing things that I don't think they really do, and it's just I'm not sure how to describe it without like being able to tell you parts of it, but it's not good. Anyway, they both enjoy their time somehow, and they both say "I love you" afterwards, which feels a little soon, but sure, that's the whole premise of the series, so we'll let it go. And then we immediately get to the epilogue. In the epilogue, Lincoln is moving in. He's fixed her pool for free, and they're gonna live happily ever after with their cute little pool parties. This was not terrible in the way that I expected it to be. It was terrible in a less entertaining way. I wanted more angst. I wanted more drama. I wanted less of this, I think. Less of those vibes. I don't know who either of these books were really for. Certainly not my idea of a hot summer fantasy. Like, if the sex scenes were better, maybe I could be more into it and, like, find a reason for them to exist, but, like, neither of these men are really doing it for me. Like, Lincoln and Corinne just didn't seem to have personalities at all. Other than Corinne being incompetent on so many levels. Like, relatable, I guess. Sure. Who doesn't love an incompetent woman? But yeah, that is our quick little toe dip into the world of pool-themed Kindle romances. Thank you for joining me on this ride. Thank you so much to both of the authors for providing us with a little bit of entertainment and joy in our day. If you would like to see more terrible romances, please like and subscribe. If there's something else you would like to see next time, let me know. I'm planning like all of the spooky fall shit right now, and I'm very excited about it. But yeah, thank you, and I will see you next time. Don't fall in any pools.